It's late at night. Usually around this time you aren't expecting any visitors. Everyone else is asleep and the neighborhood is quiet, and it's just any ordinary night. As soon as you are getting ready for bed, you hear your nervous dogs barking violently, and then it stops. You hear the doorbell ring not only once, but multiple times. As you look through the peephole, you see two young teenagers. You wonder to yourself, why would they be here? You open the door, and they demand to be let in. You take a look at their eyes, and it's all black, no sign of life. Whatever you do not let them in. These children are known as the black-eyed children. Nobody knows where they came from, or their origin, but some people do think that they are the devil or some demon, and others like to believe that they are aliens or some form of a creature. Usually some of the people who have encountered the black-eyed children reported that they came late at night. There is a knock at the door. When the door is answered, there are one or more, usually two, young kids in their early teens at the door. For some reason, the person opening the door is immediately gripped with an insane fear that originates at the very core of their being or soul. Their heart pounds and they want to run and escape, but are seemingly unable to do so, and they are instead rooted to the spot. Kids aren't usually threatening or violent at first, but are rather devoid of any emotion, and quietly but insistently demand to be let in. The reasons they give for wanting to enter vary from using a phone to wanting something to eat or drink. It is usually at some time around this point where the victims notice the kids' eyes and are even more horrified by what they see. The eyes are totally black. There is no white, no iris, just total pools of blackness. This is often the catalyst for them to slam the door shut and wait inside the house until they are certain the kids have left. The intense fear eventually makes them close the door and cower behind it, sometimes even calling the police. It seems that only the person answering the door sees these kids. No one else sees them, nor even hear them, even when they are making a racket, knocking on doors, or asking to be let in. Also, people notice a feeling of being drained of energy. These kids are like energy vampires, draining the humans in their vicinity as well. In some cases, there aren't only children but also adults. Black-eyed adults are sometimes seen as well. And in some instances, these black-eyed adults also try to get a ride, gain entry to your home, or get you to give them permission to do something. Most people usually encounter them not at homes, but usually at gas stations or public places. But it depends where and what time. Usually as expected in the night, some people have said they have encountered some of them when they are in the car. But besides from that, this only seems to be a USA phenomenon, since most people have reported it around the USA, and not in Europe or other places around the world. But it's hard to say that when they have started appearing. But since the internet, the first reported case was in 1998 in Texas by a reporter named Brian Brethel. Brethel's story gained massive popularity, and in 2012, Brethel told his story on the reality television series Monsters and Mysteries in America, and the rest is history. This is the story. As he is sitting in his car, two children in their early teens approach him. He rolls down his window, and they ask him if they can get in, as they need a ride. He is immediately scared to death by these kids, for no rational reason, but the calmness of the children and the insistent request to be let in kept him from driving away, or even winding up the window. He describes very well the feelings of foreboding and fear that he was experiencing. Every fiber in his body is telling him he is in danger, and yet he cannot act on this. It is only when he sees that the kids have totally black eyes that he finds whatever strength it takes to break away, and he races away in his car. I was on a date with my fiance, who is now my husband. One night in 1985, this took place in New York City. Both my husband and I are lifelong New Yorkers. My husband is an accountant, and I am a retired teacher. We were going out to dinner and I had just pulled over near a restaurant. As my husband parked the car outside the restaurant, we both heard someone knock their knuckles against the car window, which is unusual, as there is normally a doorman at this restaurant to do such a thing. I immediately felt fear like I've never felt it before. My hands were shaking without any reason to shake. I was instantly petrified. The two boys were pale, from what I could see, and looked completely stoned. My immediate reaction was to leave, but my husband didn't want to leave without dinner. My husband opened the car door and the two boys stood back to let him out. He was just going to ignore them and go into the restaurant. I opened the door on my side of the car and got out too. When I turned around, I looked at the two boys, and in the dim street light, they looked as though they had just had black pools what their eyes should be. Just two large patches of black, no other color at all. "We need a ride in your car," one of them said to my husband. My husband had turned his back to them, locked the door. He hadn't seen their eyes. Well, he replied, "Your soul. It won't take long." The boy said as though he didn't hear my husband's response. "We're just young people who need a ride." That was so weird. Since when did teenagers call themselves young people? It was like two old men had jumped into these teenage bodies. "Oh shit," my husband said at that time. He was a real New Yorker. "You better take the subway," as my husband Mike turned. The boys started screaming, "Invite us to your car. We can't enter unless you invite us." My husband was about to yell back when he saw their eyes. His face completely fell. I have never seen him so shocked by something. He stepped away from them and moved on to the sidewalk. I moved to the back of our car. We both watched as these boys suddenly start screaming and shouting. The two boys backed up, still screaming and shouting, "You need to let us in." One of them screamed, pointing at us, "We have to see our friend." We turned around and headed to the restaurant. The doorman standing inside the lobby, he hadn't seen or heard the boys. We had dinner and I thought that would be the end of it. I remember feeling terrified for days later. I didn't sleep very well and had a lot of nightmares. I had a lot of headaches too. A week after, and I was starting to dread going to bed, as I would see these boys every single time I opened my eyes. I was worried they would visit us again or appear in our bedroom. I was scared to leave the house and I felt violated, as though they had attacked me. Yet all they had done was nothing compared to what others have gone through. They really didn't do much except scream, shout, and act weird. It was what happened to me afterwards that really bothered me. I really think that once you get caught up with these kids, they have a long-lasting effect on you. Nightmares, panic attacks, sleepwalking, headaches, fear of seeing them again. A few months later, things were starting to calm down. I asked my husband if he remembered the incident. He said he did, and he had met up with him again. Apparently, they were outside his office one afternoon waiting by his car. They did the same thing they did outside the restaurant. When my husband told him he was calling the police from his office, the kids didn't seem to care, one way or another. The creepiest thing was that they told him they wanted to go to an address to visit their friend who could help them. The address at the time didn't mean anything. It was just a suburb of New Jersey. Years later, we were moving to a new house, and when my husband saw the address of the house, I wanted him to see. He went white. It was the same address those boys had told him about outside of his office. What are these kids? What do they want? Some say they're demons. Others say they are lost spirits. I have no idea what they are, but they terrified the hell out of me. In one widely reported instance, the black-eyed kids were allowed into the home, and with disastrous consequences of an unexpected knock at the door at 2 a.m. Two small children stood there, and the man answering the door was totally unnerved by them. Thinking the kids had gotten lost or perhaps there had been an accident, he let the kids inside, and his wife made cocoa for them. He kept asking them what happened, and they kept on repeating, "Not to worry, as our parents will be here soon." The scared and concerned couple started to notice that their pets were behaving strangely. The husband began to feel dizzy and strange as he sat with the kids. When a woman of the house returned with the cocoa, she almost dropped it when they looked at her. and she saw that their eyes were completely black. At that point, the kids used the bathroom, and the husband and the wife started to discuss what had just happened. His nose started to bleed a lot. Then, just out of nowhere, the power went out, and they found themselves in darkness. They stood in the darkness in total fear, until suddenly, the kids left, saying that their parents had arrived, leaving the front door wide open. Outside, the woman could see a car idling on the street and two tall, dark-suited adults. After a while, the power came back on. After that, nothing was the same. The cats disappeared. The pet bird died of a hemorrhage in a pool of blood in its cage. The husband's nosebleed became progressively worse, and he was then diagnosed with skin cancer. Meanwhile, the wife also began to suffer dizzy spells and nosebleeds. Had the encounter with the black-eyed children caused this? This strange and sinister testimony resulted in suggestions in some quarters that the black-eyed children were some form of a soul eater or demon. More importantly, they want you to grant them permission to let them in. Let them into what? Your soul? Apart from another story that you can find on the internet, this is one of only 2 experiences that I can find, after many hours of searching, in which the black-eyed kids successfully gain entry to a home. One occurrence to this day still pushed chills up my spine and tears in my eyes. The night my husband held me at gunpoint with a loaded hunting rifle, something terrifying happened. My husband's eyes are bright, light blue. He has beautiful eyes, so bright you notice them from across the room. But that night when he attacked me, his eyes were black. Not just black, but so black it goes beyond words. If you ever watched that movie, The Amityville Horror, there's a scene when the father becomes deeply possessed and he turns on his family. My spouse looked 100% identical to that man. After that incident, I began to question my sanity. Blue eyes don't turn black. I'm not sure if eyes could change color, but no human has eyes like that. I did my own research, and lo and behold, there have been numerous cases dealing with narcissists and or sociopaths, where blue eyes were noted to have turned black when they were enraged. How horrifying is that? It's as though there's another being inside these people. Never nor since has he ever demonstrated that behavior. He says he doesn't remember any of it. The meaning behind these black eyes could be when they are angry, or as part of a fit of rage. The idea is, I suppose, that black eyes are demonic, and that his anger is evil, such that the person takes on some demonic qualities like those menacing and soulless black eyes. In fact, there are many accounts on the internet of people's eyes turning black when angry. However, what is happening most of the time is that the person's pupils dilate to such a degree that it looks as if they develop an all-black eye. In most cases, that is all that is occurring. But there is also a time that in that moment of anger and hysterics, they are taken over by a demonic entity. A common Hollywood technique to indicate possession or alien affinity is to have the character have black eyes either permanently or periodically. After the possession is over, or the spell is broken, the eyes turn to normal. Somehow, black eyes are a sign of evil, and this theme is echoed in the black-eyed children phenomenon. The eyes are often said to be the gateway to the soul. As of now, the black-eyed children are still appearing, and it looks like there isn't any way to make this end. In my opinion, I believe that they will keep showing up, and if you do encounter them at your doorstep, then whatever you do, do not let them in.